Okay, hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this week's Double 15 Minutes. A few seconds or a minute or so later than I was expecting to go live, but yeah, a few technical issues. I was just wondering how long that was going to be before they all came back in. Yeah, but just want to say hello, everybody. Thank you for those that are joining us from LinkedIn and YouTube, and of course those that join us from Facebook every week. So this week I am going to be talking to so we've had Natasha joining us from LinkedIn. Hi Natasha, how are you? This week we've got a chartered financial planner joining us, Mr. Raj Modha. I'll bring him on shortly to talk about money. It's funny in a rich man's world, and actually it's quite heart-wrenching in a poor man's world at the moment with everything we're going through with COVID. So I hope this week you're all well and just finding ways to stay positive, finding ways to be upbeat. Yesterday I had the absolute honour of joining a webinar on, with a lovely lady called Hibo Wadari. She is a FGM survivor and human rights activist. And yesterday we were talking about FGM, but that I will leave for another day because we are going to be covering FGM in a few weeks' time with Hibo, who will be on. So, what's the weather like where you are? Here, it started snowing, and I thought, we were at the end of the snow, which is a shame because I'm not really a fan of snow anymore. I used to be when I was younger, we used to sort of like have loads of fun snowball fighting and stuff. And yeah, Natasha, it's lovely to see you as well. So I am going to bring Raj on without further ado, because let's talk money. So Raj, Mr. Modha, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you today?
All good. Thank you, Rupa. All good. Thanks for the invitation to come and join you.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you did. And just for the audience watching, we didn't actually speak beforehand to colour coordinate our black tops today.
No, for once.
For once. Exactly, absolutely. I mean, we used to wear the same school tie many years ago. That was a daily. What are we going to wear today? But Raj, thank you so much for joining us. And just sort of like, I don't want to sort of like hop on too much because I think you've got so much knowledge to share and so much experience to share with people that are watching. I just firstly, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and also chartered financial planner? What is a chartered financial planner? What exactly do you do?
It's a qualification held within financial services. You need to get to a certain level of qualification before you can now provide financial advice. And that's a combination of exams plus amount of time actually providing advice. So it's exams and time spent or time served. Chartered generally means that you have to take a few more exams, a few more technical exams, a lot more detail, a lot more technical knowledge, and then you have to do, at least, if memory serves me right, 5 years worth of actual providing advice within the financial services industry. So where you should be experienced, and those people who are chartered should have the technical expertise to be able to deal with the majority of situations out there regarding financial advice.
Okay, and just tell us a little bit more about yourself, Raj. Like, who is Raj Modha?
I'll give you the good bits.
Well, there are only good bits, aren't there?
There are a couple, maybe. Depends who you talk to. I run a company called the Finance Lab. I'm very fortunate to have married well above my station, and I have 2 wonderful children. The Finance Lab itself has been trading for about 19 years, so we've been around for a while. We're a full financial services company, and I think the interesting thing about it is that we sort of operate in a bit of a niche. So we help women who are responsible for their own financial well-being, security, and planning. And what we try to do essentially is try to bring a tenderness to the financial advice process, which is very much around numbers. Oh, everyone sees it to be just numbers, but actually it's a bit more than that.
Okay, so you say sort of like, bring sort of like more tenderness around sort of like women. Have you found in your experience that women, even though they can be good with budgeting, budgeting households or budgeting, sort of like where they spend, what they spend, etc., that maybe they're not as, I don't know what the right word would be to use, as focused on, sort of like the management of money, or is it why women? Why sort of like more sort of like gentleness for women?
Genuinely, they're a bit nicer to work with.
Okay.
They have our process is if you take it back a couple of steps, the process around financial advice and financial planning has started to change quite considerably over the last maybe 10 years, where the question isn't always now just simply about how much investment, a rate of return you can get, or how much money you can get. It's now become more about, it's becoming to become more about how do we use your wealth to be able to allow you to enjoy a lifestyle that's authentic to you. So a lifestyle by design. And that involves not only the use of numbers, so that chartered financial bit is important, but it's as much about coaching, financial therapy, and that tenderness bit is sort of metaphorically holding the hand of the client who sits with you. So that's where the industry is going more and more, to be honest. I've been very fortunate to be part of that industry for about 10 years. So and we're making some fabulous strides in really helping and changing people's lives for actually what they want it to be. I think the issue has always been about, I want to be wealthy and I want to be richer, and that's great. For many people, it seems to be the goal for almost everybody now. If you look at almost all your Facebook posts, everyone talking about being a millionaire or a billionaire or this investment or that investment. But what they seem to be have forgotten is that actually it is much about mindset. It's as much about how you think and whether or not you allow yourself the ability to be able to enjoy a life that you want to be able to live, rather than simply how much money you've got in the bank.
And I think you've really hit the nail on the head, because I think especially 2020 and with the whole COVID pandemic, that has brought sort of like real light to the fact that the more you have doesn't necessarily mean you're happier. Because that's something that we were talking about sort of yesterday, wasn't it? Where we were sort of like saying that I suppose the amount of your wealth isn't exponentially related to the amount of your happiness.
Well, I'm a believer in that. So I think we do come across quite a lot of individuals and couples generally who come to conversations, and they might have what most people will consider large amounts of money. That doesn't actually necessarily mean that that amount of money is making them any happier. They've got choices, and actually probably a bit more choice around time and what they can do. Actually, they can be just as, if not more unhappy than many of those individuals who don't have any real wealth at all. We're often, and this is one of the things we talked about yesterday, we're often affected by our story around money. And so, and it's that story and the influence of that story on us. And that story is interesting because actually that story determines how you spend, it determines how you save. It also determines what your hope for the future is. So if you're mentally always saying, I'm never going to have enough, then actually the future is actually going to be quite difficult, because you're actually coming from a point of actually there's going to be a shortage. It's probably the wrong term. There's going to be a shortage. Whereas those individuals who I think are probably a bit more positive, and because they had a much more positive experience with money growing up, will probably look at the future a bit more.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, we're just going to go sort of like through some people that's joined us, but it's that whole law of attraction thing, isn't it? Where they say that, if you think you don't have enough, you're never going to have enough. If you think that you're always going to have an abundance, you're always going to have an abundance. So I'm just going to just say hello to the people that are watching. So we've got Manish Pandya joined us, Vijay Joshi and Sanjay Chauhan, all ex-schoolies and relatives in one way or another. Chandra Bhagait has joined us. We've had Claire Pendleton Hooley joining us. She's an amazing opera singer. Nitin Patel's joined us. Chandra said hello, Raj and Rupa. And we've had some weird random comment, which I am not able to delete at the moment. Beena Trivedi Shroff has joined us. Rama Joshi has joined us. Hi, Ramafai. And Pramila Stagya is also watching with us. So hi to everybody that's joined us. And I can't see who has joined us on LinkedIn, but there's a few people on LinkedIn that are also watching this live. So hello to everybody that's watching this live from LinkedIn and YouTube as well. So going back into sort of like the Chartered Financial Planning, and you've given us like a bit of an overview, but could you sort of like take me through a step-by-step process of how you would work with a new client?
I suppose let me change it a little bit. Let's talk about what I believe, what many of the more effective planners are doing right now. So the majority, I think the old-fashioned way of doing financial advice was that you went and saw a financial advisor, speak to you for maybe an hour and a half. They'd then take most of the information regarding your financial data, and then they'll probably come back to you at another meeting, a meeting number 2, and that game would then be about telling you that you should be putting more. They're normally right, putting more money into a pension, or putting more money into an ISA, take some life cover, and going to be able to get you potentially a better rate of return because we've got better access to better investment managers, etc., etc. That was the traditional way, and then they'd meet maybe once a year to sort of review what was going on. The other side of it, or where the industry is changing, and what I would sort of ask the listeners to be looking out for, are more terms around lifestyle financial planner, financial life planners, holistic financial planners, for the sake of better terms. And these individuals as a whole are trying to do the job a little bit differently. I think the majority of people of the advisors in this space don't believe they have the right to talk to you about your money unless they actually know you better. So they need, and that means understanding what your life's all, where you've come from, and actually where you want to go. It's not therapy, but what you're actually trying to do, or where I'm trying to do, is hold a space so that people can actually give a story about money and their relationship with it, and then that allows us then to use. Most people, no, it's wrong. There is a number of us that use software that allows you to show you whether you will or you won't run out of money, and then ultimately, if required, you'll then advise on financial products that sit on the back of it. But then the conversation that sits on after that on a more regular basis is then helping those clients ultimately attain whatever those aspirations, goals, whatever you want to call them are. And our job is to help them along those lines by providing a financial plan and then potentially financial coaching or anything else that sits alongside.
Okay, yeah, because the thing is, it's interesting what you say in terms of holding space, because this is something that a lot of coaches talk about, holding space. And it's like, really sort of like, in terms of, I know what holding space means for me. What do you mean when you say you hold space for them?
With money especially, it's a really interesting thing. I suspect most people aren't dissimilar with this type of story. You grow up in a household and your parents almost say to you, you don't talk about about our money situation to anyone. And then at the same time, in majority of families, not all, people don't actually talk about money at all among themselves. We meet couples who don't actually talk to themselves about it. So it's a very difficult topic to talk about. And so no one talks about it, if that makes sense. And so most financial planners, I believe, hold a very sacred position in the lives of people, because we probably give them the only real opportunity where they can be really open and honest about what they feel about their money and their circumstances about money. And most of the time it's extremely humbling, because actually we get stories that they've probably never told about, or thoughts they've never had the opportunity to talk to about. So holding the space for me is actually just giving them an opportunity to, I suppose, sometimes asking the right initial questions. But after we've asked them that question, to be able to shut your mouth for long enough in the first instance so they can actually talk. Which many people who know me will go, crikey, Raj, can you do that? And then two,
Yeah.
when you are listening to them, to be neutral. And I think that's the very other interesting thing about coaching. Because I think many people can listen rather than hear, but often what's going on in their heads is that they're not truly listening. What they're actually doing is their own stories and their own relationship with that particular situation then comes to the fold. So when I'm coaching, the responsibility is to be neutral. And actually, so when I say holding the space is to hold the space in such a way that I'm not actually advising. That's difficult for an advisor generally. But and go, actually, this is for them.
Yeah.
A Samaritan saying is, our job isn't to save you, but to stand beside you as you save yourself. And in many ways, that's what I'm sort of suggesting.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, because at the end of the day, it is about that, because you can't save people who don't want to be saved. But for me, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of keeping that complete neutrality when somebody is talking to you and actually truly hearing them and not just listening to the words. And I think a lot of people say they hold space, but they don't necessarily do it, because they sort of, like you said, they've got their own story going on in their mind, and then they project their own perspective into the person that they're listening to, and that may not be conducive to that person's energy. So yeah, holding space, I think it's important, and I'm glad you've said that, Raj, because that will give people more confidence then, wouldn't it? So if they're going to someone who truly holds space and listens and truly hears them with complete neutrality, you are going to be a lot more comfortable with opening yourself up. So, right, before we go any further, I'm just going to sort of, like, say, we've had a few more comments coming in. So we've, Manish has said, hi, excellent so far. Thanks, Manish, all credit to Raj here, because he's the one that's sharing his knowledge. Chandra has said, happiness starts from within. If one starts from a base point of positivity, you can then assess your way forward in a more rounded way to incorporate a way of living. And as long as you do so within realistic and achievable targets, then you will move forward and achieve. And he said, you absolutely nailed the point that people openly discuss inner finances within a professional financial advisory situation. So going back to sort of Chandra's comment, in terms of sort of the base of positivity and, having that, you can potentially set sort of your realistic and achievable targets. How much do you feel that is what you do, or what you advise, or how you work with people?
Again, I'm going to talk to it in terms of what our part of the industry is. I'm really passionate that everybody gets advice.
Yeah.
In whatever shape or form, and the industry is expanding a bit more. And it's funny, money's a funny thing, because because of the stories that we've sort of experienced and then created in our own heads, we all now feel that we have an understanding of it. One of my biggest obstacles I have when I'm advising, especially self-employed individuals, is that once they've started making a little bit of getting success and starting to make money, they seem to think they know how it all works, when in fact a large proportion of them know how it works within their maybe little sectoral of their business, but really haven't been educated in how money really works and the ups and downs of it and everything that works alongside it. So so as a whole, I think, again, you just have to go back and say, we've had this conversation, so it's really about, and alluding to a comment I made a little bit earlier, whether you have a lot or whether you don't have a lot, your essentially the way you think about things most of the time will make very much a decision on whether you enjoy it or not. What you do find is that, and I've gone through this, and I struggle with it, if I'm being honest, is there's this constant requirement to have more. So, and it's almost saying, well, if I earn just that little bit more this year, or learn, if I get to this much, I'm going to be. Actually, what happens is you get to that much, you go, oh, actually, if I just get to that much more, this is going to. all my problems. And then it happens over and over and again.
Mm.
And I realized that actually it had nothing to do with the amount of money that I was earning. It was just that for some reason, I hadn't had the difficult conversation with myself
Mm.
about what actually an authentic life looked like.
Yeah.
And then based my work on what my values were.
Mm.
Actually, for me, that was tough. Again, speaking to clients, most people don't really want to have that conversation
Mm.
because it's uncomfortable, really uncomfortable.
Mm.
And when I say holding the space, I'm kind of looking for that. I'm kind of saying, well, actually, what does an authentic love look like for you?
Mm.
Strangely, once you've got that, what's the values of the life you want to live by?
Mm.
When you put those elements together, everything else then becomes about the numbers.
Yeah.
What do we then need to do to allow you to be able to enjoy a life that actually is on purpose, authentic to you, and designed by yourself?
Mm.
Then it's actually then almost sort of the coaching bit is then actually hoping them to constantly keep on track.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, it's an evolving conversation, isn't it? So it sort of like looks at things. Now, one of the things I sort of like do want to ask you is like, you know, sort of like going on from there, because we're talking about authenticity and living an authentic life based on your values. So what about, say, someone who comes in and says, well, I want to be happy, but I want to be able to buy anything I want in the world and travel first class, etc. So, you know, what about sort of like those people? How do you then help them find their authenticity when they're sort of like wanting a certain lifestyle because it looks good, but they also want the happiness which comes at the expense of looking good? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the other side of it is that we're often told that you can't have one without the other. I think that's a good thing. You know, this idea of abundance. You know, we do this because we want to teach our kids a lesson, and I always smile at it. I do it, and you kind of say to your kids, "Oh, money doesn't grow on trees," you know. You're already telling your kids from a very young age that actually that resource is absolutely limited. So you're coming right from the get-go. You're saying it's a limited resource. It's a limited resource. So your children, all children, are growing up to think, well, actually, this is really difficult stuff to get hold of.
Yeah.
Whereas you probably find that in certain areas of society, those children are brought up with a different type of mindset to say, well, actually, it's there. If you want it, your job is to be able to work out a way of being able to get hold of it. There's more than enough of it to go around, which is probably a slightly different story to have children to think that way, because actually that changed their. And this is the interesting thing. That's the relationship, right? So going back to your original question, and you have to tie me in because I'll just go off at tangents. You know me, Rupa.
Okay, we've got no hope then because I go off at tangents as well.
This idea about having it all, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think where you just need to be careful is that you could spend your whole life looking to hit one home run, constantly just trying to hit the ball out of the park, one guy, one time, because you're going to be extremely wealthy and you want it all.
Yeah.
Difficulty with that type of thinking is that actually you then stop and prevent yourself from living in the present.
Yeah.
And based on your own spiritual writings in poems and in your thinking, I know you're attached to this, I'll connect with it a bit more. Is just that actually you kind of sit there and go, you can spend, you know, it's all great because we're all told that we can be anything we want and we can succeed and all the rest of it. But what happens if we don't? What happens if you've been constantly waiting to hit this six or this home run?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get to 50 or you get to 55. And that, for whatever reason, it could be down to the fact that often, if you read a great book by a gentleman called Dr. Daniel Kahneman called Thinking Fast and Slow, he's won a Nobel Prize in economics. He'll suggest that a large proportion of success is down to luck. Actually, it's scary when that happens because you're then thinking, oh God, this is all about me. Actually, it's down to luck.
Yeah.
And once that you start to realize that's the case, well, actually, what if you just haven't had the luck on your side to be able to make financial, those large amounts of money? Then what's the other 20 or 30 years prior to that?
Yeah.
So for me, and I'm also want to ask a question. There's a guy called Sanjay Chauhan who's asked a question.
Yeah, I had to ask you that. So yeah.
Financial investment is that as much as we try and it's up to the parents in some respects. You have to have, they learn from you. Your habits are from you, and they learn from you. You know, it's, and again, we went through this yesterday. If you don't mind me asking you the question now, I didn't give you a chance to answer that back, unfortunately, is what's your first memory or experience of money, Rupa?
So, you know, we'll go to Sanjay's question in a minute because it's a very, you know, I think it's linked to what you've said. So, yeah, I mean, my first experience of money was that, see, because I'm the third child, so I'm the youngest girl out of three girls, and we've got a younger brother. But you know, I'm the youngest of three girls, so I don't ever remember money being an issue in any way, shape, or form. You know, if I wanted something, you know, I didn't get everything I wanted. We always had everything we needed, but you know, my mum, I think, shaped my view on money more than my father did, because my mum is she's an abundant thinker. So for her, it's the money's always there, but the money doesn't just come. It's not, you know, like we said, plucking it from a tree. My mum was very much, you want something, you go out, you earn it, you make the money, and you've got the money, and you spend it. You know, be careful with it. But she was very much. Sorry, I'm going around in circles here. I'd probably say my first experience of money wasn't positive, wasn't negative. It was just neutral. It was like, it didn't really figure in my life when I was a child. It only started figuring into my life when I went to uni, and you know, sort of like was living on a grant and then working 2 or 3 jobs just to subsidise my grant and my spending. But because it was very neutral, I never had to think about it. I don't think I've ever developed overly healthy habits with money, but I've also not developed an unhealthy attachment to money either. And maybe there's a clue there when I've said unhealthy attachment, because actually, is attachment to money healthy or unhealthy? I think it's down to your own individual thinking and programming. But short answer, I didn't actually have a positive or a negative experience of it, because I was always given my money for my bus fare, my lunches. If I needed new clothes or shoes, they were always there, and we always had food on the table. My father was very much, you know, hold on a moment, I've got a tree in the garden, money tree, let me just go and pluck it from there. But I didn't really, even that I didn't experience as much, because my mother and my grandmother were always there to provide. You know, if I wanted something, those two were always there to hand me money. So yeah.
So based on that, thanks for the answer. Based on that experience you had early on about the fact that it kind of always turned up when you needed it to a point, maybe not immediately, but after a period of time. You say that when you now look at things moving forward, whether there's purchasing and how you're looking at money going forward, would you almost say that your assumption is that you kind of think that money eventually will just turn up to a point of when you need it?
Okay, so my mindset has changed somewhat over the last few years, in that for some reason I do believe in the law of attraction, and whenever I've needed financial support, it has somehow dropped into my lap. So I've had, you know, money dropping into me from unexpected sources. But yeah, to a certain extent, I still do believe that, you know, when it's needed, it will be there. So what we'll do, we'll continue this in a minute, but we're just going to go through a few of the comments. Okay, so we'd said about, you know, Sanjay, he has said, you know, what your thoughts are on how to positively engage young people into financial investment. Mithil has said, great talk so far, really insightful. And Sanjay said that his first experience of money was scarce and a struggle to obtain it. Now, Raj, I mean, we all grew up in the same era, literally in the same area, and we all went to the same school. I think we all had very similar upbringings. And then we had other school friends that had completely different upbringing to us. So going back to, you know, what I've said and what Sanjay's asked in terms of engaging younger people, and Mithil said the law of attraction is interesting. What are Raj's thoughts on this? So, bear in mind what Sanjay's asked, what I've said, and what Mithil said. what would your opinion be around that? Because I know you want to sort of like get back to asking me the questions, and I will answer them.
Wonderful deflection, Rupa. To answer the question on in financial investment, it's a travesty that the schools aren't teaching kids how money works, to be honest. It's still, but amazes me that we're not giving kids more education in schools about it in whatever shape or form. And if it's not coming from the schools, then it has to come from parents. But the difficulty with that is, what if the parents themselves have their own issues and their problems with actually understanding what money is? And so kids are being taught about money, but actually it's from parents. And if they've got an unhealthy relationship with it, the kids more often than not will then pick up that unhealthy relationship. It's not their fault. I think most parents end up trying to do the best they can, but then they're affected by their own parents and their own experiences. So again, it's sad to say this, but the schools have a bit of a responsibility, in my opinion. But I'll just give you a quick example of something that most people won't know. If you have a child and you paid essentially the minimum, and a child can have a pension from essentially the day that they're born, and you put the maximum that you're able to, so you could put up to £2,880, give or take, every year, forever, to be honest. But for the first 18 years, the government would actually give you the balance of that to top it up to £3,600. So each year up to the first 18 years, you could put £3,600 into a kid's pension scheme. For me, this is probably if you want to give them a gift, this would be the gift. If you stopped putting money in on the 18th year and didn't add a single penny to that pot, and you didn't touch it until the age of 65, that pot will be worth more than £1 million. And you've only put in 3 times 3,600. Now, Mittel will probably be able to answer this quicker than I will. So, but it's £60,000 over an 18-year period, and that's at a basic rate of return, a straight line rate of return of only 5%. Most people don't do that. What better present could you give your children than exactly sorting out their retirement a bit further down the line? So some of it, I think it's just, I know with our kids, if they get presents, we're a bit harsh with them, but they've got to put 50% into the bank, and then the other 50% they can spend. So we're teaching them, hopefully, good habits. The habits are that you get something, it has to be put away for saving. You get something, you have to put away for because all of this stuff is simple. It sounds simple. It's just never really easy. Society sort of takes it over. Law of attraction is interesting because I know many people believe in it. It's an interesting thing because I think a lot of it comes from The Secret. Actually, a chap who I actually believe they stole it from is someone called Dr. Wayne Dyer. Listen to him. His stuff is about the law of attraction, essentially, and this power of intention. So I think sometimes the idea of attraction is mixed up in I'm just going to think and believe it's going to happen. When to a point, you have to take some form of action. So it isn't the basic laws of physics, really. It's just there has to be some sort of action to take place for this force or energy to move on to the next part. And then I also believe in luck, because of that suggests it's all as much as it's about luck. So we all know lots of people who work hard. I think if you look at the fact that if you work hard, and we know lots of people who work extremely hard and probably aren't benefiting. We don't look at the benefit of that. And again, it goes back to this idea of success is based on financial position or financial reward or their positioning in society. I know a lot of people who are very content, who can probably don't need anything more than 10, 12, 15,000 pounds a year to live off. They're probably the happiest people that I know, because actually, and this is a stoic way of thinking, actually, if you can control your thinking to a point where you don't necessarily need more, live off and be happy with less, then actually you're then not affected by what happens with other bits. Does that make sense? So it's almost putting it in reverse. So rather than demanding, I want more, you're almost, well, actually, what does a good life actually look like? And
Yeah.
actually, and then basing it on your values, which you talked again about yesterday.
Mm.
Build a life based on your values, and then what are those values?
Mm.
Down. Most people haven't. Yeah.
No. Yeah. But that's just, you see, because I mean, I sort of like, sort of going back, and I think, let's go to Sanjay's thing in terms of sort of like practical solutions to engaging the younger children. And I think, Mitchell's got a right idea in terms of, needing more education. And maybe it's something that, you guys could talk about afterwards. Because Mitchell, she does a lot in the education side of things, and she's got some exciting things happening. And I can't wait to talk to her in a few weeks because she'll be on the show to talk about it. So I guess it's sort of like, like you say, because it's generational, isn't it? So it's generation after generation after generation, and that programming is instilled all the way through. So I'll give you an example of both of my parents. Their parents went from being very, very well off to literally being, nearly on the street and not having very much money. Now, the difference was my nanny mum, my mum's mum, had her brother and other people providing for her, so she never really had the urgency to go and find money or earn money. Whereas my dad's mum, again, one of the strongest women I know, and I'm so proud that she raised me, because she was widowed at a very young age. My uncle was 2, so he was the youngest of 9 kids, and he was 2 when my grandfather passed away. So my gran had to go out and do every single job. So she went from, being covered in gold to her husband losing his business and going bankrupt to passing away to then being, completely living in poverty. And she would, sew buttons, wash clothes for people, wash dishes. Like, she literally would do any job. She'd go and sweep people's yards just to make sure that there was food on the table. So my dad's side of the family, half of them are very much like, no, there's scarcity. And the other half are like, no, you know what, we've got enough. So it's a very weird thing. So that's why, like, I've got that sort of like, with my parents, that whole sort of like contradictory emotion around money. My mum is very much, yes, the money's there, you've got to go and work for it. And when you earn your money, you need to make sure you're putting 10, 20% away in savings. Don't spend where you don't need to, but if you want to spend, but as long as you're saving. Whereas my father is, sort of like, spend. And he's very good. I mean, he's always been very amazing with his family. But they both have completely contradictory views on. One comes from a point of abundance, one comes from a point of scarcity. But that was also down to their upbringing and the programming that they had in there. And then when you talk about luck, is that down to, we talk in Hinduism as well. We talk very much about kismet. So kismet, fate, destiny. Would you say the luck actually is part and parcel of that spiritual belief, or why? Where does luck come into it?
On a purely statistical standpoint, rather than a spiritual one, the likelihood that we're going to be more successful than others, and these are smaller and smaller things, is that I was, for example, for me, born in the UK. So as a small population in the grand scheme of things, but a great education system, the opportunity at that time to actually get money from the government to go to university to spend on beer and the odd educational book. There was the opportunities for the type of jobs that were available to us. There's some really, and then they talk about, and there's a really fabulous book called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Came out only in September. And he talked about Bill Gates' situation. So Bill Gates became this Microsoft owner, one of the wealthiest people ever to live on this planet. And he went to a school that had a 1 in a million chance, 1 in a million chance to have a computer. And the reason why Microsoft was invented is because one of his school professors, who was an ex-army chap, decided that actually his particular school needed to have a computer at that moment in time. one of the first in the 1 in a million chance of him having that computer. That's luck. Yeah, to have a computer, to be in at school, and we've all got it in that respect. Doesn't mean you don't work hard and all those other bits and pieces, but actually the opportunity is very different to a young Indian boy, a young African boy on the streets of Mumbai or Delhi and those other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
What then comes off the back end of that is, and people have different opinions, and I'm not here to question the whole thing. I won't question whether someone's religious or spiritual or the dark side. I'm for the dark side.
Sorry, that just made me laugh, but go on. Yeah, I like that you can make yourself giggle.
Some of that is then around the saying that actually, what I'd like the viewers to think about is actually, are the actions that you're taking really in balance with the values that you live by or want to live by? I think more often than not, those people who will go to a good coach or a good planner will have that conversation. Because we all seem to be rushing. We're all busy. Actually, being busy, this is wonderful badge of honor. Look how busy I am. I'm doing 10 hours, 14 hours, 15 hours. You could turn around and say, well, actually, that's not a badge of honor. It's lunacy. Because actually, all you're really doing is trying to earn more money. And actually, if you ask those same individuals, what does good life look like? What does extra money look like? Almost every single one of them won't be able to tell you what it is. Or a large proportion of those things have got nothing to do with money whatsoever. That's the interesting thing about it. I suspect I haven't, like a good politician, I haven't answered your question.
No, that's fine. Because I mean, the thing is, it's like this conversation, like you say, it's fluid, and this is what when so just to let the viewers know, it's like normally when we're doing a show like this, it's like I always have a good in-depth conversation with whoever is going to be on, so that we have an understanding of what it is, and we always say that the conversation is always going to be fluid. So let's go back to Sanjay's question in terms of how do you engage children? What would your advice be? So you're saying that you've with your children, when they get birthday money or money, you always get them to put 50% away. How do you engage them to do that?
For us, it's been really a case of trying to explain to them that saving's a good thing. It's a positive thing. In that, and this is our perception again. So this is not a perception. This is our perception. We want them to feel that they shouldn't use credit to buy things. So we want them not to be in a habit when they're older about using credit cards or loans to buy the things that they need to buy. But that's our perception as parents. We want to pass on to our children. We want them to be able to have the idea of thinking about, it doesn't always work, Rupa, thinking about what they purchase and actually saying, well, actually, is this something that you actually need? They're 11 and 14 currently, so that thinking is challenging for us right now. And we feel that we're winning simply by the fact that they're sometimes looking at it and going, oh, damn it, they've got to put the money to one side, but they understand that's important to us. So they've kind of have no choice. We're almost forcing them down a road with this in some respect. But we think that over time they'll understand the reason why. And we're going to be sort of saying to them, you need to put a certain percentage of it away. So when they start to earn whatever job or occupation they decide to sort of follow, we want them to be in the habit of putting maybe 10 or 15% to one side from that first paycheck onwards. And this is what this other training is about right now. So they have to live within that, 80, 85, 90% of their pay, their net pay, whatever that looks like, so that they can, because that skill set of saving is so important. Appreciate you can use credit cards. Appreciate you can get credit in different ways. But it also means that often people will just spend for the sake of spending, because it's easy to spend especially nowadays, everything's contactless, everything's Amazon, two ticks, bought it. The value of spending becomes a little bit easier. Exercise, which I think I might be able to shoehorn into this, is and this is all down to a client. It's got nothing to do with me. She worked it out on her own. We've been working with her and coaching with her, and she wasn't very comfortable in the way that she was spending her money. So what she's now done is that she's set up a spreadsheet. She's good with spreadsheets, to be honest, and set it up in such a way that she's actually every element of her. She went through a bank account and went through, said actually what value does spend happen. So just for a practical exercise for anyone who's maybe suffering a little bit with spending, good or bad, and budgeting, good or bad. They went through their spending and actually decided to put down what value this particular every item of spending had on them. And whether, okay, so for things like mortgage, keeps the house over my head, shelter, blah, blah, food, whatever it ends up being. But there were other elements which she kind of went, oh, actually, I do need a mobile phone because it's for communication. It allows me to communicate, but it also allows me to take certain precious moments and all those other bits. But there were certain things that she didn't need. So she had all the package on Sky, so every film and everything else, and she kind of went, she got a certain amount of value because she likes sport. So she got the value from the sport element on it, but got no value for the rest of the packages. And it's a really interesting exercise because I'm going to try it over the next few days, and I suspect I'm going to get horrified by how much of my money does not actually match up with the values that I have.
Yeah.
She saved over £1,000 a month.
It's amazing.
By simply just doing and she had to be honest. This exercise is being honest.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to allocate whether I have any value to the spending that I have, and actually, you then take it away, and you're balanced. And so all of a sudden, you get into a situation where if you are struggling a little bit, and there's budgeting issues that you need to sort out, maybe that's the exercise, because it's not a negative exercise. It's not say. You're not saying to yourself, again, it's about mindset. You're not saying to yourself, oh, actually, I'm going to have to stop my spending because actually I'm overspending because it's a negative attitude. It actually comes to the point of actually, I know where I want to go for my life. This adds no value to my life. So I'm going to cut it out because actually, and it's a positive way of looking at your spending habits. And she's been running this now for a few months and it's working really well.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. To find that she's actually saving herself £1,000 a month on things that didn't add value. So we've just got a few more comments. So Chandra said, "This is what I meant about a base point of happiness. Be content inside, then look at opportunities which will need action." So yeah, because every action has a reaction, and every reaction will create an action. Ozzy has joined us from Sardinia. Hi there, sis. Hello, my lovely. And she's saying that, you were talking about how, you've instilled the values of no credit and, spend what you have rather than getting into debt for it. This is how she's raised her daughter Maria to actually sort of think about money. And I can sort of say that, yeah, with Maria, I know her quite well, and she does have this very she's got an abundant way of living, but not to the point where she then struggles for anything. So she's very, very focused. So we've had Nimisha Gokani joining us, and Raj Modha has said, "After having many years of guilt of not having enough money saved each month, I always thought the answer was I must go make more money. However, I learnt over the years this wasn't always the right approach. I learned to scrutinise what I'm spending or where I'm spending my money and make better choices." So is that what you're talking about? When you said about the spreadsheet and the client that you were working with, that she looked at what aligns to her value, what aligns to her happiness, and then actually if it doesn't align to it, get rid of it.
Absolutely. And what an amazing way to live. And Covey, I love her. I know Covey, she's my cousin, and she's beautiful. And hi. Often when people look at this, they kind of say, "We're actually, I'm not going to be spending any money." But actually, wrong. What you're actually doing is actually, if you're willing to take the responsibility of actually understanding what's valuable to you and what's important, then this process actually means that you will always spend money in the right way. There will never be any guilt appropriated. So this client, her sister was having quite a difficult time, and her way of being able to get a release was buying handbags, and it wasn't as if she was buying £50 handbags. She bought 3 or 4 or 5 handbags, and it cost £2,000 or £3,000 for those handbags. This is at Bicester for that particular shopping day. So, and again, you have to, this had nothing to do with their values. She was just having understandably a very difficult time at the time. But actually, if you're doing what Covey's doing, or if you, sorry, Covey, to give her a full name, or my client's doing, you're just sitting there going, actually, you're just buying for what is important.
Yeah.
What also happens, and this is, I think, the great thing about if you work with a good coach or a good financial planner or a combination of the two, is that they will help you define what those values and what an authentic life looks like. So ultimately, everybody else, if you pardon my French, can take then a flying jump. You know, it doesn't matter what they're up to, what car they're driving, where they're going on holiday, what they're doing. And actually, it shouldn't, because this life and whatever it looks like is really important. It should be important to you. And too many people, in my opinion, live a life now, and I'm really passionate about this, as you can probably tell, my feet are going everywhere, are too busy trying to live a life that they believe everybody else is looking at.
Yes.
And even though people say, no, that's not me, it's crap. Most people are looking at it and go, well, actually, everyone's doing this, and I'm going to do this. And actually, what my responsibility is, as if you want to know what my job is to say, right, we're going to get the space, and you're going to design a life that actually is perfect for you and how you want to live it, and tell everybody else to take a jump. And my job is then to help them run that and run their finances about it. So if you want a sentence about how I help people, that's what I do.
Which is amazing, because that is exactly what it is. And that this is sort of going right back to the beginning when you talked about authenticity and living authentically. Because I think we are very much caught up in the social media world, aren't we? Where everybody's like filtering their lives, filtering their photos, and it's like, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at me, look at me, look at me. And they're seeking external validation. And when they seek that external validation, they're then going to go and live outside of their authenticity, because they want other people to say well done. But what they don't realize is that these other people, when the shit hits the fan, these other people are not going to be there holding your hand. You know, so
and they're not going to be there at 70 or 75. If the software that we use will show people actually whether they will or they won't run out of money. It's the software that's, and it's not only the ones that we use, but there's 2 or 3 versions of. But if you go to a good chartered financial planner, lifestyle planner, they will be able to map out, as soon as you tell them how their life looks like, they should be able to map out how your life then looks on a financial aspect. So it then allows you to determine how much money you need to save. If you've got a business, how much you need to sell it for. If you've got investments already, how much of a rate of return that you need. All of the elements can be calculated. But it can only really be calculated after you've actually decided first and foremost what that life needs to look like. Now, I'm not saying, and it's wrong of me to say that, you know, you what's actually a fact is, if it's a big lifestyle, it's a big number. So you have to be realistic and say, well, actually, if I'm going to be spending £100,000 a year from the time that I stop work at the age of 70, and average you're going to get to, you're going to live to, on average, our plans go to age 95. You've got 25 years at £100,000 plus inflation. And that people forget that the silent killer that no one thinks about is inflation. And in that 25 years, on average, if you're paying £100,000 on the first of those 25 years, after 25 years, you're going to need 200,000. So, and that's just on an average rate of inflation of 2.5%. So you then have to have an investment that's actually going to grow that's going to give you a rate of return that grows over that period of time. So there's nothing wrong with that. And then you've got to be realistic and say, well, actually, am I living a lifestyle currently, or am I generating an income currently that allows me to live the lifestyle I want to live in the future? And if the question is no, then what then do you need to do to change your income potentially if it's based on those numbers? But realistically, if you're on 20 or 30 or 40,000 pounds a year and you want this £100,000 lifestyle, kind of a fundamental change has to happen, right? And it's just not a case of saying, I'm just going to work harder, because it's 3 times more, 4 times more. And this is not about me saying to people, don't have the ambition. I think everyone does. I still have mine. I think at the same time, you have to be comfortable with the type of lifestyle that you're living now, and if you're not present enough to be able to live that lifestyle now, then actually you've got something to deal with, because actually it isn't necessarily going to be better simply because you're earning a bit more money.
Yeah. That makes sense. That completely makes sense. And I suppose that then links back to what Sanjay had said about how do you instill that interest in kids, in your children, and, what Mikkel was saying, the education. So do you think it's really important for for sort of like, when we talk about inflation rates and the rate of interest, etc., because actually most adults would be like, I have no idea how to calculate this. And it is, for me, it's all, well, I say for me, not me per se, but me as in, metaphorical me, it's, it's all gobbledygook. So would it be, how do you then get people to understand this from an earlier age, so that actually by the time they get to their 50s, they're not having to relearn how to manage their finances?
We should all be, and this sounds like a bit of a cop out. We should all be pushing our local MPs to get them to try and provide a reasonable experience or a reasonable pressure on the government, whichever that government is, to teach how it works in schools, and not at 17, 18 or 19, right from the get-go, getting them to understand how a credit card actually works, and that actually you're going to be, for every £1 that you've borrowed over a year or 2 years, and we've seen credit card interest rates at 20, 25, 30%, for example. So, that means for every pound that you borrow, if you kept that card, it's just ludicrous. The kids aren't taught that. And if you're able to show them how the basics or the mechanics of this works from a really young age, then actually what would probably happen is that they will think twice before they will start using that type of credit. There are instances that you use it, because you need it. The problem with credit cards is that the majority of adults don't know how they work. So as much as I like to say, your parents should be teaching you, as parents, we should be teaching our children how this works, most parents don't know, and most parents have it. We do a lot of mortgages, and I have clients who come into the office all the time and go, "Oh yeah, we've got credit cards, but nothing to worry about. It's only 5,000." In the old days, when we were growing up, if our parents said to us they had £5,000 or £6,000 in credit, it would have been, "Oh my God, we've got an issue." Now £4,000 or £5,000 or £6,000 is just the norm. 10,000 is just, pay 300 or 400 quid a month, but don't worry about it. Everybody's got it, haven't they? Because everybody else has got it. And again, it's going back to your values again and saying, well, are you comfortable with that? But that's how people live their lives. For me, we should have a concerted effort in improving the system so the kids are taught, first and foremost. Two, if you are adults, and there's nothing wrong in not understanding how money works. For any listeners who are going to listen to this, there is a book by, I'll repeat again, it's called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. It's House, American, but don't hold that against him.
Don't.
But he's got a really interesting and a very simple way of explaining how investment works, how money works, actually how your own psychology then interacts with all of it. So, and if he does it on an audio as well as on a book read. So I suppose if anyone has any questions on it, I suppose I should say, give me a call. I'm more than happy to try and do it. But there are more and more IFAs now who are also going into schools. And independent financial advisors, or just advisors generally, who are now going into schools. And maybe this is a project with Mittel, where we do courses where we're just teaching the fundamentals of what a mortgage looks like, what a credit card debt looks like, what a bank loan looks like. Just looking at that, how money escalates, for example. Most people would have known about that example about putting that 2,880 into a kid's pension fund that'll be worth over £1 million. Most people won't know that. They won't know the power of that compounding, of how that works, which Einstein suggests is the eighth wonder of the world, right? So there's a lot there, but I think if you can educate yourself, then I think you can help you educate. And actually, maybe it's something that you can do together. You sit down with your kids and go, actually, I don't know how this works.
Yeah.
Let's both learn, and we can try and work it out together that way.
But I definitely agree with you. I think it would be a great thing for you and Mitchell to work on together. So there you go, Mitchell. You know what? We've got you another new project, but it might be worth looking at. So we've got a few more people that have joined us. So Ushma Valerio has joined us. Amar Majaria has joined us. Raj Patel, Seema Sadani. And Ozzy's saying it's so easy to spend with a credit card. She had a friend in the UK that used her card for holidays, handbags, shoes. It was a debit. She got herself into a debt of £50,000, and she had to end up remortgaging her flat. Which I think a lot of people do get into that situation. And then we've got Rama Joshi, my fight, who's just said, hi, both of you. I think it's a good topic. I'm watching with you. And Mitchell saying, awesome. Seema's saying, Gevel Sadani. So yeah, I think this is probably, maybe we could look at doing another topic in terms of, practical step-by-step solutions or step-by-step advice to advise children and parents together as to how they can work on their finances. Because I know when we were at school, we had, was it TSB Bank that came in, and we used to have the TSB Bank. I don't know if you remember that, Raj, whether they had it with your year, but we had it. And I remember sort of being one of the bankers for the TSB Bank, because it was all done at, I don't know who else was chosen in my year actually to work on it, but it was just, that was our savings. And that was sort of TSB coming into the school, trying to show us the value of savings. However, there was no discussion around it. There's no, what are the value? It was just, here's a bank, here, you can start saving. So Sanjay saying he remembers. But there was no, I mean, like Sanjay, maybe you could answer this, but, I don't ever remember being educated around the banking other than, oh, here's a bank and you're a bank teller and you can help with, help people save money. But there was never the education piece around it as to what that means for our future.
Yeah, and I suppose not giving away either of our ages. You've aged a lot better than I have. But we didn't have credit cards when we were growing up. In theory, our parents didn't. It was essentially you bought what you had in your pocket or your bag. That situation is no longer available. As soon as kids almost hit 18 and they go to university, the banks are offering them large overdrafts. They almost fall into debt the day that they start uni because of the student loan for the tuition fees that kick off. So you've turned 18, you put your first foot on the university ladder, and you've got 9,300 quid you've got to pay back to pay back on day one. So I like that's quite normal. Debt's quite normal to people, and so paying it back becomes quite a normal set of circumstances. But you've got to. I just think this idea of understanding even more debt, or how much more debt you can go into, if you're not careful, and then. To buy a house these days is ridiculous. To a regular 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom house is over 150, 160,000 pounds in Leicester these days. You just can't buy anything cheaper. And
that depends on the area as well. I mean, if you want a better area, 150 wouldn't even buy you a 1-bedroom.
No, and so this is really difficult times for those youngsters, because they're having to almost rely somewhat on the bank of mum and dad more and more. You've got people coming to us and saying, well, mum and dad are giving us 30, 40, 50,000 pounds because to get us onto the ladder is that I can't afford it. I just can't afford it. And then you add on credit card debt, the student loan debt, and then at the same time, you're actually saying to them, you know something, I'd like you to put 10% away in savings if you can, because that'll be really helpful for you for your future. Kind of looking as if we're crazy people, right? Because they're just saying, well, that's not even a viable option.
Yeah.
But we have to teach them it. You've got to teach them in a way. Do you suggest to them? And I had an uncle suggest to me many years ago. He went, rather than taking your business to a point where you're earning just about enough money to buy a house with a mortgage, why don't you plan your business to buy a house without a mortgage? So, and again, it's it's the mindset thing. So we're telling the kids that actually the way to buy a house is to go out and actually get a mortgage.
Yeah.
And I'm probably talking myself out of mortgages here. So, and that's what we've been doing that for 19 years. But what if the mindset of the kids was like almost like the old days?
Yeah.
To work out a way that you can earn enough money that actually you buy the house in cash. Now, this is a lot more larger sum of money, but I'm saying to them, you've got the capability and the capacity to do this. You might have to wait 2 or 3, 4 more years. And even if they do take a bit of a mortgage a bit further down the line, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What we're saying to them is that go and work out a way to do it. If you're saying to them you only need to get 30,000, I say only, I mean it with the respect, you need to earn £30,000 a year to get you a £120,000 mortgage because you can buy a house for 160. Why don't we just go back and say to them, tell you what, it's a £200,000 house. Work out how to get £200,000. What do you need to do? It changes the way you think because you have to work out a way of earning more because your mindset is completely focused then on saying, I need to maybe 40 or 50,000 pounds a year to get me the savings. There's a guy, Dan Sullivan. I love Dan Sullivan. He's a great coach. He's got loads of stuff on YouTube, and his attitude is the fact that actually the number that you really want to earn is almost open if you can just work out the best way of being able to do so. It's normally by not doing everything yourself, by using other people. So he talks about a concept called Who Not How. It's a book, Who Not How, that he's actually released. And that, so everyone should be whoing, not howing. So if you're self-employed, you run your own business, who do I need to do to take myself to the next stage rather than how do I do this and lose another 10 hours of the week?
Yeah. So and again, it's like, well, we're going to have to close this shortly because we've gone way over time. But and I think it's a conversation that actually really does need to be expanded on. So maybe we can look at doing another one because I do a podcast as well. So outside of the double 15 minutes, maybe we could actually continue this conversation onto a podcast and give like step by step directions to people. And also, so like you said earlier, sort of. If people want any sort of have got any queries or looking for advice, etc., how do people get hold of you?
I can. Website is www.financelab.co.uk. I think I am on LinkedIn, Raj Modha, and Facebook, same name. Not particularly good with social media, if I'm very honest. We had this conversation earlier today.
Yeah.
But just Google Finance Lab. My company's called the Finance Lab. So you'll get all the contact details from the website.
Okay, perfect. And so we've just had a few more comments. So Mithil was talking about the book you said earlier, great book, Who Not How. And Dipti has said, this has been so insightful. Gavita has said, any other books that you recommend?
There's a load. If it's a case of mindset, I really recommend a gentleman called Ryan Holiday. And he's wrote 2 books of particular interest. One is called Ego is the Enemy, which is another reason why I deal less with men than with women, because women have less of an ego and are willing to take advice. And 2, The Obstacle is the Way. And those 2 books are just sensational. Really changed the way I thought about everything. Who Not How is the one by Dan Sullivan, and he's got loads of audios on that. And then the Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And if you know me for long enough, I've got another 400 sitting in the background somewhere. Which
what we'll do is, once this show ends, we'll put these into the comments so that people can sort of like find links to them. What are your what are your sort of like thoughts around the book? Is it Napoleon Hill? Is it Napoleon Hill, the Think and Grow Rich, or Abraham Hicks is Ask and It Is Given? Because they both go around the law of attraction. I know we spoke about it a little bit earlier, and I did say we're going to end this, but these subjects do fascinate me. But yeah, what would you think about that? The fact that they say think and grow rich. Can you really you've said that it's down to luck, it's down to planning. But can you really think and grow rich?
I don't believe Napoleon Hill's book is genuinely title correct. Because if you look at all the work and all the things that he tells you within the book, there is almost every single chapter is about some form of action. So he's constantly getting you to, whether it's the building of the mastermind group, the setting down of plans, the structure of plans, all of that stuff is action based at some point. So you're taking positive steps about moving forward. So I'd have to. I can't comment on the second one by Hicks. I haven't read it, which is something I'll have to now look up and add onto the ever-growing book list I have. But the Napoleon Hill one, I think, is more about action as much as about thinking. I think it's a case of, and this law of attraction is great, because everyone, if you think and if you think and if you think, you'll get there. We're actually naming one person who has thought them way, an Olympic champion, a chess grandmaster, a really successful business person. Some form of action and plan has had to be taken in place. I think the other interesting point is, and I read this about, it's topical because there's a chap called, I believe, Tom Brady, who most people wouldn't have heard of, but he's the quarterback for American football for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are in the Super Bowl today. Tom Brady is 43 years old and has won 6 other Super Bowls. And they actually said there is no way a person of that age could get to a point where he's leading a team to the final of the greatest American football, which is a weird game anyway, but to have to get to that level. What I read about him, if you read under the surface, is that he spends $1 million a year on coaches. Nutrition, mindset, financial advisor, all of these different individuals come in and coach. And look at anyone who's actually exceptional at what they do, nearly every single one of them have a team of individuals that they work with to get them there. Why then does most people seem to think that their own personal success is going to happen by being this island? So going to your book about Napoleon Hill, because I do get back to the point eventually, sometimes, is that he talks about this mastermind group. And actually they're the coaches. And so I just feel that eventually always comes back to a point where actually you need to surround yourself with people who are going to blow smoke up your, but actually people who are going to hold your feet to the fire, people who have your best interests at heart, not men or women. But for them to do that more often than not, you need to have people in front of you that you can be really honest with and say, actually, this is where I want to be. This is who I want to do. This is how I want to love, and all those other things. And get those individuals to really help you.
And it's true, because it's like the poem that I wrote about no woman, but actually no human is an island. We all need people around us. So Raj, thank you so much for your time today and the plethora of advice. So we've had a few more people joining and watching. Sanjay said, good conversation. Thanks, Raj. And Rupa. Bala from LinkedIn has said, can you please circulate the list of all the books mentioned? And we will post this on LinkedIn and Facebook, the websites and the books that you've mentioned and recommended. So Raj, thank you so much. It's honestly opened my eyes up a lot as well to sort of like my thinking and sort of how I look at money as well. And hopefully the audience, and we've had great interaction. So are there any final words of wisdom that you would like to share? So some, any motivational words of wisdom?
Not really sure they're motivational, Rupa. Something it's just what I'm learning every day, and this is not because of some sort of wisdom. It's just looking at people. The people who seem to be the ones who seem to take the most out of life, who seem to be the most content, the ones who seem to really, I look at it and say, actually, they seem to have leading such purposeful lives for themselves, are ones which have really nailed down the idea of what good looks like to them.
Mm.
The idea of living a life based on your own authenticity and your own values,
Yeah.
being honest enough to understand why that is. So this is other people's wisdom. It's got nothing. This is not mine. It's just the fact that actually, one, there is no way. There is no one way.
Mm.
So whatever you've got to so far, you've done the best you possibly can. Stop giving yourselves a hard time. And you know, these are all cliches, but if you don't enjoy as much as the time that you've got now, you have absolutely no idea whether or not you're going to be happy a bit later on. But spend a little bit of time on your own self, thinking about what's valuable to you, thinking about what's authentic to you. And then if you need to, reach out and get people to help you to get there.
Yeah.
And it's hopefully been a real value.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this whole talk has been amazing. And I think just, sort of like, just to sort of like paraphrase what you've said is, yes, it's about your own inner happiness. Stop looking at your neighbour's grass and thinking the grass is greener. Actually, the grass is green where you water it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Raj. And I look forward to the next chat with you. So I'm going to...
Sorry, yeah. As we both know, I can talk about this all day.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, we found that yesterday. We both was like, okay, look, we've really got to put the phone down now. So I could, but no, it's just really, really great sort of chatting to you, Raj. And thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show, because I think this has been such a valuable conversation all around. So yeah, thank you.
It's okay. Yeah. Take care, everyone. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks. I will let you go for your Sunday, and I'm just going to let the audience know what we've got happening next week. So take care, Raj. Thank you. So yeah, that was Raj Modha. Amazing. I mean, like literally, I could talk to him all day. He's so knowledgeable, very, very wise. Even though he says he's not, he does. He has like real nuggets of wisdom that he shares with everyone. And I just love, the last bit is that, the grass isn't always green, and the grass is green where you water it. So next week, I have got a consultant psychiatrist, old age consultant psychiatrist called Dr. Mangesh Murudkar, and we're going to be talking about the reality of Alzheimer's and dementia. There has been, obviously with COVID, there's been a lot of talk about our elderly population and those that are sort of like needing the extra help but are not necessarily getting it. So yeah, next week, Alzheimer's and dementia with Dr. Mangesh Murudkar, and we'll see you then. Okay, have a good week, everybody.